and then there's 20 minutes of Q&A. So you can ask questions, or you can share your experiences and tips to help engage people productively in a non-adversarial way about conservation issues. So, okay. Like on your channel.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, yay. All right. Thank you again for your votes for our officers this year. I look forward to working with everybody. I think it'll be fun. It's just fun. Organizations are fun to me. This PGARP group, Pollinator Garden Assistance and Recognition Program, is a fun outreach service of the chapter. And as tonight, my goal is to make sure that as members and visitors here, you understand what the PGARP program, why we have it, what it's for, who does it, and how you can actually access it for yourself or your neighbors. Because we are asking for requests to make yard visits, and I'll explain what we do in those visits. I need two hands here. Let's see. Okay. Okay, it'll do.
Touch the screen and then anywhere, and then hit the button. There you go.
Okay. This program, and I will use the words PGARP, is a partnership between our chapter, Texas Master Naturalist Hill Country, and the three Native Plant Society of Texas chapters located in Bernie, Kerrville, and Fredericksburg. So we partner in those cities or those towns with the members and volunteers.
Keep going, keep going. Someone's talking in the background.
Keep talking, he
Yeah.
says. Okay. All
I
right.
don't hear anything from your computer.
We got it. Go ahead.
No,
there
were
was a
doing,
meeting.
but I'm waiting for you to turn yours on before I turn mine off. I have to be able to hear them.
They can hear you talk.
No, they can't. I'm muted.
But everybody, please mute their
I can see you.
Zoom.
I'm muted.
Hey, glad to know that. All right, we're moving on over here. All right, here's the goals.
You're not.
Program education about native plants and pollinators.
You need to mute yourself.
Awareness, one of the okay. You know me in meetings, I don't like more than one person talking at a time. Keep going.
Hey, Phil and Deborah, you need to mute your mics. Got it?
Okay, Phil, I'm carrying on. Okay, second item, which I want to emphasize is a goal of PGARP is to create public awareness. Thank you, about the conservation of pollinators. That's the point of the program. Also, it's a public relations service of this chapter in our communities, and we use our chapter, Texas Master Naturalist chapter, as well as the NIPSOT resources and volunteers to do that. And finally, we make connections with people out in the people with gardens, people with yards, people with land that they want to have a pollinator garden in place for. How do I do that? What's the landscape plan? So we connect people with resources. That includes nurseries who sell native plants. It includes places, websites and resources like Lady Bird Johnson, the nature centers. We have a list of resources that we put in a packet that we give to each of our gardeners. Now, how do we deliver this service? Okay, we go in teams of two volunteers to a visit. This is a group of several because we were invited to see this gorgeous garden in comfort. We schedule these visits at the convenience of both the volunteers and the person requesting, and they're friendly conversations. We do walkabouts in the yard, around the gardens, and talk about what exists and what they want. What are their goals? So we like to think of that as a friendly conversation. We are not lecturing and we are not mandating what needs to happen. The gardener's goals is the focus of the visit. In that conversation, we talk about these things. We talk about the property, the soil. Is there an erosion problem? What's the topography like? Deer and how to keep them off the plants. Well, we don't have the answers, but we have the conversation. And, and where's the sun come from and where is there shade? Water sources are important for pollinators. We can describe how to put together a pollinator puddle with a dish and some rocks and some water for these insects and butterflies to light on when they need a sip. Habitat creation is one of the big focal points. We talk about the property. You can walk in property and you can tell if it's a habitat or it's potential habitat or it's not a habitat. So we really focus on how to use native plants to create that environment to support the ecosystem. That's a concept, but it also has some practical application, and that's part of what we do in our visits. This is, again, the beautiful garden that we saw in Comfort, and you can see, even though it's not landscaped as we might think in urban terms, it's beautiful because everything flows, and the walk paths are mulch. Just an example of what we get to see out there. So we make suggestions. As I said before, we're not telling people what to do. We're suggesting, making recommendations about what we see and what might work based on what they want. We have a resource packet that we leave with them. We include a Native American seed catalog always, and we have 2 booklets. This is a recommended native plants put out by the Kerrville NIPSOT chapter. There's a similar handout. It's from Bernie that they use for the Bernie area. And this includes everything you want to know about all the native plants that work in our area. It's a spreadsheet if you open that up. The second thing we have in these packets is 20 native plants. It's a booklet put together by the NIPSOT chapters and actually funded by those chapters for our program. So when I say we give them resources, we give a lot of information. It's up to the individual to actually do the planning and the purchasing and the digging and the TLC. We follow up with every visit with a report. The report comes 1 to 2 weeks later. It's all the suggestions and things we talked about. And it also includes a list of programs that are coming up, some of the training and presentations that gardener may be interested in. This is a picture of Jean. She's here. She's a member of the Kerrville team. When Catherine and I went to visit Jean for a consult, we saw this beautiful garden in a neighborhood and with terraces and terrain. And Catherine and I looked at each other after we walked around and we went, she's a pollinator champion. And so here we are presenting to Jean a recognition as a pollinator champion. There are some requirements for that. And Patricia has a handout with those requirements. If you're interested, take one from her when you leave tonight. It's also listed on our website. This is, you can't read it, but this is our 3 or 4 pages that include pictures. I was walking on her shoulder and came to our table and said, I was so excited about my report. She had all the plants highlighted and said they were in the box she was going to buy. So some of it is very practical for some types of people. Okay, who are the volunteers? This is the heart of the team in each of our areas. Mary Freshour, would you stand? You are here. I saw you. Mary Freshour is our coordinator. Thank you. And Kathy Webster's here. And Kathy, would you stand? Kathy is the Bernie coordinator. And look at her team. And there we are. We don't always go in groups like this, but it's really fun when we do get to assemble. Mary Freshire is also the Fredericksburg coordinator. And so those people are on her team, and I'm the Kerrville coordinator. And this is the team here. And not mentioned are four people from the class of 24. Greg is here. Would y'all stand? If you are a PGART volunteer, please stand. Greg and Suzanne and who else? Ron, Sandy, Jean, Kathy, Maria, Suzanne, Steve Griffith is on Zoom. So it's just been a fun year. We, as I will show you statistically in Kerrville, we have blown the lid off of our past numbers of visits per year. So that's who the volunteers are. But how do you or the public access the program? You go to the website. There's a drop down. This is the page you will come to. The drop down has services, and you find the PGAR page. There's the Pollinator Champion label, and you will see two buttons. That's all you have to do is press one of the two: request to consult or request to be recognized. Some people are moving along in their gardening and they think they've met the criteria, so they ask for a visit. We go out and we assess that with them. And the form is online and it's very simple. It goes right to the webmaster, who sends it off to Mary. Mary sends it to Kathy or I, and we get busy putting a team together. So it's very easy to access. I'm just going to go quickly through these. Oh, okay. I'm talking fast because I want to get to some of the end of this, some of the points I want you to know about. Look at 2023. Kerrville had 14 visits in the year. This year so far, we've had 34. Yeah, we were busy. We were busy in June and July. And if you look at the total, we have served 314 homes, households, gardeners in the last 7 years. The program started in 2018. So it's growing. I keep my eyes open for what's out there. We've talked about the HEB grant to Texas Parks and Wildlife for pollinator garden projects. If you get the CTEC, the Cooperative Electrical Group in Gillespie County, they had an article in this month's magazine called Be a Good Steward for Pollinator Gardens. A headline. I'm like, oh my word. Okay. And then the Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine, if you subscribe to that, it has an article about pollinators, supporting pollinators on the prairie. So it's around us. It's here. And I think with Catherine Galden's social media contacts for the Kerrville team on the Facebook page for our chapter, she posts the pollinator garden visits and the recognitions. And how many hits? 60,000 since when? Last year. People are interested in this subject. So I think we get the word out, all the teams will be busy. And that is, I'm going to skip this. That is why native plants and pollinators are so important in our outreach service. Is really a fun team, but an important service to our communities. Just want to say a bit about the native plants and the pollinators and what we say to people. These are just basic bullets. We can go into more detail when if a gardener is interested, but basically the blooms are what people see, and they want plants with blooms. But we also indicate that those blooms of those native plants protect and build the soil. And so we talk about what's happening underground to help educate and create more awareness about using native plants. Native plants don't need fertilizer. A lot of gardeners use fertilizer and wonder why. Why not? Then the gardens that the native plants create habitats, as I mentioned earlier, and that supports our hill country ecosystems. And also, what are pollinators to a lot of people are birds and butterflies. But we talk about moths, and we talk about bees and bats and wasps, yes, and flies and beetles and all other kinds of insects. The important thing here, and we're in the daytime when we do these visits, but moths are nighttime pollinators. Why do we see the moths around the lights? Because they go there and get disoriented. So we talk about dark skies and keeping your exterior lights reduced to prevent light pollution so that our nighttime pollinators do have the opportunity to do their job. Dung beetles, I've just read a little bit more about dung beetles lately. They have some kind of sensors on the top of their heads when they're rolling that dung. And they use the Milky Way or constellations to figure out their direction to where they're going. So if we blast that area with external lighting where they can't see, we can't sense that, then they get confused and don't end up doing what they're supposed to be doing at night. Interesting kinds of things you learn in this project. Okay, pollinators, this is a general statement about what pollinators need the native plants for. They nectar on the plants, they pollinate other native plants, and many are larval hosts for butterflies. For example, we know the story of the monarch. And thermal regulation, this goes back to the insects and the invertebrates. They have a very difficult time controlling their body temperature. So in severe conditions, your habitat needs to support those insects so that they can survive by finding shade or going under cover. So our native plants provide this for our pollinators. And of course, the point is we need to conserve them. This is one of the friendly entrances at one of the gardens that is open to the public. So part of the goal of becoming a pollinator champion is that you share that in your neighborhood with having your sign on your gate or on your post so that other people understand what you're doing. There's an example of the pollinator champion sign out in the front by Gracie's table. Planting natives conserves our water resources, and this is a big topic in the hill country right now, and people do want to know what can they do, and we say plant natives. The pollinator champions, the designated and recognized pollinator champions, balance the life cycle. They're committed to this, balancing the life cycle of the pollinators with the ecosystem health. That's the commitment that's made. According to Doug Tallamy, here's sort of how that goes if we don't. Adult insects will nectar on non-natives. We all know that. We've seen bees and butterflies on non-native plants, but some of those insects will only reproduce on certain natives that they've co-evolved with. If the insects can't reproduce because their host plants are butterfly bush or daylilies or lavender, then songbirds can't reproduce enough because their young don't have enough food. Baby birds need about 80% of a diet of insects. So let me talk just a bit about Vitex, and I'm Vitex, that beautiful tree with the purple flowers that has a fragrance that's people just love. The landscapers are still planting them and selling them. But general nectar users will be all over those flowers. And what are they doing? They're collecting the pollen, and then they move on to pollinate another Vitex bloom. They could be pollinating native plants if they were nectaring on a native plant. And that is the answer, if you will, one of the discussion points when people ask or say, that's just a beautiful tree. I just love that. Look, it's full of pollinators. Yes, it is. And it's pollinating more of the same instead of our native plants. The two of the requirements to be a pollinator champion include at least 9 months of seasonal bloom. And those materials that I showed you earlier include information that helps you plan for that. And that the plant mix must be 75% native and 25% non-native. The list, as I said, Patricia has one of these lists that come from the website. Please take one if you're at all interested in being considered a pollinator champion, because we really do want to increase that visibility. Okay, volunteers are needed. You see, we have a big team. We have a lot of great people. We talked about, well, what makes a great volunteer in this program? I'm just going to run through this quickly. A good listener, and you have to be a good interviewer, and you have to be able to listen to what you hear. You have to understand the pollinator conservation principles and about native plants, but you don't need to know every one of them. We all started out learning what's the first 20. And now, you know, we amaze ourselves when we can name 40 in the plant in the neighborhood. So it's experience in our training is on the job at this point. You must be clear in your communication with people and be instructive without being harsh and sound like you're mandating how things need to go. Open and adaptable and ability to listen to other people's questions and perceptions and notions. Did I just turn that off?
Yeah.
I did. What do I do?
There you go.
Here we are back. Sorry. Awareness of your own filters and attitudes. We all have them. And you have to be careful how you let those integrate into a friendly conversation. And finally, I love this one. I have two people here with very short vignettes. You have to be able to withstand surprises. Okay, Patricia, go. Oh, so sorry.
So Catherine and I went out on a visit, and the woman wrote that she would like to convert a perimeter of her front yard into a pollinator garden, and it was filled with St. Augustine. And it had one tree. And so we gave her suggestions, and her aide said, why don't we go look in the backyard at some of the different, we've got sections in the backyard. And we went, and this woman was a pollinator champion on the spot. She had spent years putting in a stream, and there were 90 different natives, and it was just the most Eden-like of places. It is such a surprise. And now she's repeating that at all of the rent houses and Airbnb she owns, because she wants pollinator champion signs all over this town.
Great.
Well, here's an illustration of how you really never know what people are going to say to you. And you have to be diplomatic. Sandy Kennedy and I were on a site visit last year, and once we found the property, it was great. Really nice guy, top of a hill in Carville. And he had pocket gardens all over his 6 acres. And after we finished with the site visit, we were doing what we like most to do, is to stand on the front porch and talk about pollinator plants. And we were getting ready to leave, and he said, do you want to see my fox? And so Sandy, I think, said, oh, do you have a fox? And he said, yes, it was under the house. I shot it and stuffed it. And so I think we took a step back and repressed the urge to say, you shot a fox? No, we don't want to see your dead fox. But what he thought was that the fox was denned up under his house during the daytime, and he thought it was rabid. And so we tried to be diplomatic and tell him that fox sometimes do that, especially if it's a female fox and has kits. And you do sometimes see them during the day. And we asked him before we left to please not shoot any more foxes. And he just didn't know. And sometimes you encounter that. People are well-intentioned, but sometimes they just don't know, and you have to gently tell them the facts. And I don't think he shot any more foxes.
Thank you. So being able to withstand surprises on the spot. Thank you. Also, how much time does one of these visits take? This is sort of a BMS of interest. Between 4 and 6 hours, because it's volunteer service when you prepare for the visit. It's volunteer service driving. It's volunteer service at the site, talking for, running through the program, and then the report. So it's about 4 to 6 hours for an individual volunteer. Okay, these are some queries. I'm going to hold the answers. I've talked about the vitex, but this is an example of what happens. The bees love the vitex. Yes, they do. What can I put in the front yard that the deer won't eat? And I heard that hackberry is a trash tree. So we sit down and we talk, or we pull out our material and we speak with, in a neighborly fashion, what those questions are, because they're usually related to their goals. Here's what you can do. You can attend NIPSOT meetings. They have great programs, educational, and learn more about native plants in our area and in Texas. You can volunteer, contact one of the three of us and let us know that you're interested in being on the PGARP team. Plant natives and plan to become a pollinator champion in your neighborhood. Talk to your neighbors about it. Talk to your HOAs about it. This slideshow, parts of it could be used for something that you might want to provide in a group meeting. And request a visit. We're open and ready. We have able-bodied volunteers, and we do this all summer, and we probably do it until it gets too cold in the winter. So thank you very much for your time. I apologize I went over. Any questions, we're around. Thanks.
Past your first presidential presentation.
We're counting slides.
I'll start off by telling you that I don't have any slides, so we won't have any technical problems or anything like that. I'm old school. I am going to pass around some materials for you to look at as I talk. And then if you have any questions about that after we get through, then we can discuss those as they come up. And Frank's going to get, I guess, me on the Zoom thing. Well, first of all, I'm very proud that Jim Stanley asked me to be the coordinator director of the LMAP program. LMAP stands for Land Management Assistance Program, and Jim developed this program about 20 years ago. He saw a need for especially new landowners in the hill country to be able to have a meeting with knowledgeable naturalists that could guide them on things that might come up with their newly acquired property. As a lot of you probably know, people that move to the hill country, they always want their hill country property to look like whatever they came from. Whether it be San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, New York City, California, we get them all here in the hill country. Because why? It's a great place to live. It's a beautiful place to live, but they want to change it. And they don't understand that it's very hard for them to come here and do that. Number one, there's not enough water. Number two, the plants that grew in Houston don't grow in Gillespie County, Mason County, Real, in the hill country. It just won't work. So he decided that he would develop this program where naturalists would go out and visit with the landowners and advise them in a diplomatic way, if that's possible, about what they should and shouldn't do. I and my team are probably a little less diplomatic than Cheryl's team. We go out there and we tell them what they should and shouldn't do. We also tell them, now you don't have to do anything that we tell you you should do. It's your land. You're going to do with it what you want. We're just trying to give you options. And so you can take that advice and the material that we give to you and use it however you wish. So this program's been going, like I said, about 20 years. I looked at some stats on it. Jeff loves stats. Since it began, we've had 586 visits through the end of this year. Over 48,296 acres have been evaluated. Almost 50,000 acres of hill country property has been evaluated through this program. Now, most of the visits that we go on, well, first of all, we limit our visits to 10 acres or more. There's no max that we do. since I've been in the program, we've gone as much as 786 acres to one of the ranches that we went to. The program is designed for not neighborhood lots, not your 3 acre, not your 5 acre, not your 1 acre, but larger areas of land where landowners can do a lot of damage if they've got the opportunity to their native landscape out there. The first thing they want to do is cut every cedar down that's on the place. Because that's what everybody has done in the hill country for hundreds of years. Why did they do that? So the cattle and the goats and the sheep could have grazing land to eat everything out there that may be on the property. Now, you can still have a native piece of land and you can rotate stock through it. But again, you know, in most occasions, if you've got stock on a piece of property, they're going to eat everything out there. And they're going to eat the most desirable things first. When they get through with that, just like a deer, they're going to go to the next secondary thing that they like. And then the third thing, until if there's running too much stock on the land, which landowners have done historically in the hill country, they overgraze it. They put as much stock on it as they can. And then there's no native plants left and very few plants to hold the soil. One of the main things that we talk to people about when we go out to their land is erosion. Almost every hill country property that we've been on has an erosion problem or a potential erosion problem. I'm going to go ahead and pass around. This is kind of like the 5th grade when you had show and tell. I'm going to pass around just a few sheets of things that we have noticed in the hill country or suggestions that we may have made. The first of which is talking about exclosures. I know you've talked about, enclosures, but an exclosure is something that keeps items out of a protected or wanted to be protected property. The first piece of paper that you're going to see in this short little packet is an exclosure that Addie and I made when we bought our property, because shortly after we bought our property, which is 9 miles north of Fredericksburg, we were unfortunate to go through Uri, the freeze-ageddon, Armageddon, whatever you want to call it. And every tree on our place had dropped limbs or fallen trees, every single one. It looked like a stage 5 hurricane had gone through the land and it was just trash. So I finally got my tractor and pushed up a lot of brush all over the place, had 18 burn piles. And then in one area of our property, which is the most remote, I decided to try something different. What I did was make an exclosure. In other words, I piled up all the brush in a brush pile in a circle and left the interior as it was when we bought the place, just to see what would come up once the deer could not get to it. Now, the exclosure I built that you'll see, it looks like a big brush pile, but it's about 7 feet high, maybe 6 to 8 feet wide, and the interior is about as big as a 2-story house. So about 2,500 square feet that is enclosed by an exclosure to keep the deer out because they can't jump the barrier. You can do the same thing with fencing. You can do it on a smaller scale with caging of plants. Any native tree that we find on the property, I try to put a cage around it so that the deer can't get to it. It's growing there. It likes to be there as long as the deer can't eat it. But, we don't have a plant on our place that's higher than about 1 foot tall because the deer eat everything. So when we go out to a visit to a property, we want to know what the landowner wants to do with their property. What are their thoughts? What are their dreams? What are they trying to do? and we try to guide them in a nature way to get to where they want to go. Because they don't know how to get there. They've heard rumors, they have thoughts that they may have heard from other neighbors, other books, other people, but oftentimes those are not correct. And so we try to guide them the way they ought to go. So we spend usually about 3 hours on each visit when we go out to the property and meet with the landowner. Usually, if it's a large place, we're going around in a mule or a Polaris or a pickup truck, stopping at various locations on the property, getting out, looking at every plant, tree, native grass, flower that we can find. And like the Pig Art program, we make a list of everything that we find on the property. This is just a sample of the list on one of the properties that we did that is color coded with a picture of the plant that we find, and then a link to a website that tells you all about that plant, what it likes, where it lives, where it thrives, and what kind of soil that it likes. On this particular property, we found 115 species. So it's amazing what you can find on a property that has not been overgrazed. And if you really, really look, because some of the things that we're finding, Sharon Hickson's on my team, Jack Davis is on my team. We have other folks that help us occasionally. Ron Childers has been on several visits with us. And if you look, Sharon Hickson's she's down there finding flowers that are 1/4 of an inch in diameter, in weeds that are 4 feet tall, grasses that are 4 feet tall. So we try to find everything that's out there and list it for the landowner. Then also, like the Pig Art program, we have a report that we give to the landowner. This report is probably about 13, 14 pages. And in that report, we discuss all kinds of different things, overgrazing, oak wilt, erosion problems, ball moss. Who's got ball moss on their property, by the way? Well, ball moss is not bad, okay? It's a Tillandsia, it's a member of the Bromeliad family. It gets all of its nutrition from the air and the sunlight and the moisture. And the example I use when we're out talking to property owners is the reason it's not hurting your tree or taking nutrients from the tree is because you know that it's not getting nutrients from a power line where you see, ball moss growing all the time. So it's not harming the tree. We tell people these things, and then we try to back it up with material that we provide to them in a booklet that I'm going to leave down here if anybody wants to look at it, about what resources there can be for the landowner in their quest to make their property as natural and as beautiful as they can. So we talk to tell them about ball moss. We give them a pamphlet from the Extension Service about ball moss that says what we just told them. And then they can take that, and when they're educated enough that when their landowner friends, neighbors come to them and say, oh, this ball moss is killing my live oak tree. Well, maybe not, because here's what, Texas A&M says, that the research says it's not killing your live oak tree. So we try to back it up with information in the packet. We also have a seed catalog from a couple of seed companies that we give to them. We also give them the same pamphlet from the Kerrville NIPSOT chapter. We give them a rack card so that if they have a neighbor, they can give this to the neighbor. They can contact me to set up a meeting to come out to their place. We give them a pamphlet on oak wilt, how to identify it, how to prevent it. We tell everybody, if you're going to cut an oak tree in the hill country, as soon as you cut it, you need to paint it. And I just tell them to buy the cheapest black spray paint they can at Walmart or Sutherland's or wherever on the bottom shelf and spray that wound as soon as you cut it, because that's what attracts the beetle that has the fungus on it that causes the oak wilt in the hill country. So we give them these packets when we leave. These have bibliographies in them. They have information about cedar in them. They have sources that they can go to, which we encourage every landowner to get other opinions from the Texas Forest Service, from Texas A&M, from Wildlife and Fisheries. Every source that they can get information from will be helpful to them. Some of it will back up what we have told them, but every source out there kind of comes to a property with a different perspective. Texas Forest Service is going to be looking at the trees. Wildlife management people are going to be looking at the wildlife. We have a broad spectrum that kind of covers everything that you would have had in your TMN class, and try to cover as much of that as we can when we're walking around with the landowner. The landowner, oftentimes they're really, really proud of their property. And as you are with your property, and they want to show you things about their property because they are proud. They want you to see what they've done. They want you to see what they're going to do. And all of that goes together in trying to help them get to their goal. And you have to listen to what they say and then try to guide them in the way that they can most help their property and not do damage to the property. We try to get to them as soon as they contact us, because oftentimes they're out there with a tractor. They're out there. They've talked to the cedar eater people. They've talked to people that are gonna come in and basically rape their property. And once you do it, it's going to take 20, 30, 50 years to try to fix the problems that they have caused. So as soon as we can get to them, we get to them and try to put them on the right track. And we find that that's very helpful. So that's kind of what the program does, how we do it. We also give them Jim Stanley's book, Hill Country Landowner's Guide, because this covers everything that we talk to them about. And again, it's backup material for them to believe what we have told them. And I think that's very important, because you can come out there and you can talk to somebody and they're going to say, oh yeah, well, he's from Louisiana. What does he know? Well, I am from Louisiana, and everything in Louisiana is different than it is in Texas. And fortunately, I was able to take this class in 2019 and dispel a lot of my preconceived notions about what the Texas Hill Country is about. So this backs us up. I find that that's very important, and the landowners are very appreciative of the information that we give to them. I think this is one of the most valuable programs that TMN does, because it reaches people that would not normally get this kind of information until, if they ever get it, much later when it's too late. So with that, I think that kind of covers everything that I wanted to touch on. And I don't know how you're going to do the question and answers.
See, Cheryl, come on down too. And we got 15 minutes for questions. And Mark, are you the one getting Zoom questions? No questions out, okay. Kathy has the first question. If you're here, please wait for the microphone to come to you.
Where can I get a copy of that Jim Stanley book? Where is that sold?
Riverside Nature Center sells it, I know. You can get it through, I think this is Texas A&M Press. You can go online. And you can figure out how to get it that way. Yeah, Texas A&M University Press sells it.
What's the name of it? Name of the book?
Hill Country Landowner's Guide by Jim Stanley. And if you go to their website, it'll be on there and you just look up Jim Stanley's name and it'll show you the publications that he has put out, this being one of them.
$23.95 on Amazon.
There you go.
Okay, so for both of you, where do you think how do people find out about you? Like, they're finding out somewhere or the other and then coming to the website to sign up, but how do they hear about you in the first place, you think?
Well, we get with the LMAP program, most of it's coming through the website. A lot of it's word of mouth by other landowners that have heard about us. I personally go to a lot of functions like this and speak to tell people about, the LMAP program. And so that's helpful. Cheryl?
We ask that question now because we want to know, garden clubs are one group in neighborhoods. Several people know one of us through Texas Master Naturalist chapter. And they just hear about it, native plants or pollinators. The gardens that sell native plants sometimes have the rack cards for the pollinator garden program, probably usually in the spring. So we know that network also attracts people who want to know more about putting in a pollinator garden. Help me out, y'all that write report. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you asked me last week, Becky Exeter
At Riverside Nature Center, probably Cibolo.
Yeah, Becky Exeter at Riverside Nature Center referred us to you.
Okay.
Plant sales. We have the rack cards at the plant sale and give them away.
Repeat that.
Yes, the plant sales have tables about pollinator garden program. And we're there too in Kerrville. So it's a big exposure because it's all about native plants.
Y'all wait for Frank or he's gonna have a heart attack over here.
Just to be.
Okay, also, I just wanted to mention that, right before COVID hit, I had gone out in Fredericksburg and was, discussing with different realtors in the area, about handing out our rat cards and information to new landowners that were actually in the process of buying their land before they called the landscaper to bring in all the exotic plants that are going to die. And so I'm trying to think of ways, and if anybody has ideas, let me know, please, to reach more of these people for both of these programs to get them before they spend thousands of dollars on these landscaping plants that will just die. And so, and will help our pollinators and our wildlife. So we need lots of more volunteers in Fredericksburg. Anybody in that area, please contact me. Please. We've had a few and there's one over there. Thank you. So please contact me. Thanks.
I recommend going to our Facebook page for the PGART program and sharing that link with your neighborhood in the Facebook group. There's a ton of information, even if they don't want an actual visit. The list of plants and the list of requirements and all that's there for them to at least consider. So our website has a ton of great information for them, even if they don't want to visit.
This isn't a question, it's just a follow on. I hear a lot about Facebook and social media connected with PGARP, but it's how do we also get that connection with LMAP, because it doesn't sound like that's prevalent on our social media. Oops.
Is it? Other questions? What is the hardest question you've had to answer yourself as a Texas master naturalist out there with somebody that's not one of us or has this understanding? What's the hardest question that you find? Because that's part of what we want to do here is tips on how to answer or how to respond.
I have a neighbor in a Vitex plant came up right by his driveway. And I know it blocks his view. Is when it gets big, it's gonna block, and I've already complained, told him how bad it's gonna be. But he hadn't listened, so I'm thinking of going over there with a carving knife while it's still small. Or some copper nails or something so they can't trace back to me. So.
Great tip. You know, in the queries that I had about the hackberry, do you ever get asked, do you know how to get rid of the hackberry? Yes, no, we get it. They're usually growing, well, first of all, it's a great wildlife native tree. It's hardy, it produces all year, it has berries in the winter, the birds eat them. Why do so many people have hackberry saplings growing up there around their fences? Because the birds eat the berries and the birds poop and the tree grows. So the question sometimes is that the right place for you on your properties? The right plant can be in the wrong place, especially in the landscaping of the 80s and 90s when they planted trees really close to the foundation of a house. And now they're, 20 feet tall and it's a ligustrum. And so it's the decision of the homeowner, but tell them what the problem is with this. This is an invasive tree or sapling. It will make all kinds of family members up and down the side of your house. And what's happening to your foundation underneath over all these years, no one knows until you have a problem. So that's sort of the approach with these, some of these queries that we get, because you just look around and you ask a few questions and interview about the situation, and then voila, then you get your response, and you don't have to sound like, change it, do it, like.
Another question.
Right there.
Hi, my name's Adam, and I was following up. You do site visits greater than 10 acres, but how about your program? LMAT, does it?
Are you talking about the LMAP program or the PGARP program? Well, the LMAP program is designed for 10 acres or more. There's no limit on the size of the acreage that we will go to. But we try to not go to properties less than 10 acres. That's more designed for usually a PGARP visit because people are wanting to know what to put around their house. We're more focused on the bigger picture with larger landscapes. Although I have been to visit subdivision HOAs and talk to them, even though their properties may be 3 to 5 acres or less than 10 acres. If the total number of acreage is more than 10 acres, if I've got two neighbors side by side in a subdivision, we'll go see them if the total is more than 10. But in a HOA, I may have 1,000 or 1,500 acres, but all small lots. But if I can get to them before they all start developing all those lots, then I'm hitting a lot of people with one shot.
That's okay, Frank. Do you ever find yourself wanting to give advice to people who didn't ask for it? You know what I mean? Like neighbors or people who didn't ask for an LMAP or PGARP visit, but you see things and you know them and you kind of want to offer some advice. Do you do that or do you just hold your tongue?
You talking about just in my personal
Yeah.
contacts with wherever?
Yeah.
I do it all the time, you know?
How does that go?
Well, hey, Billy, what you been doing? Oh, well, I've been on an LMAP visit last week and I went and talked to a landowner about how to develop their land in a natural way to do that. And kind of oh, well, that sounds like, that's real interesting. I said, well, if you want to talk about it more, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. We can set up a visit with you. So, again, kind of word of mouth and just I've always kind of got the thought process of where's my next contact gonna be? And I've visited with all of the county agents in all 10 counties and left rack cards with them that they put out at the courthouses. So that's another way that we get the word out, that way.
Responding to Alice, it's actually, I don't speak out unless I'm approached in some form. And, no, I don't walk around my neighborhood and, you know, people enjoy plants and they enjoy blooms. And that's a look. And so, yes, it's sort of like after you know what a light outside of a house is that's exterior lighting that's too bright, then you're always going to see lights like that. And it's sort of like that with native plants and pollinators when I do visit other people's places, but it's their place. And if they don't ask, then I don't tell. But if I hear the opening, then it's like they're in for a little bit more, unless they don't want it, but they'll let you know that too.
Patsy Sherman has a question from Zoom. I have a lot of hackberry saplings coming up in a raised flower bed below the tree. Should I allow them to grow to make baby trees for others?
Well, I would if that's what she wants to do, I would let those saplings grow up until they're big enough, a foot tall or a year old before she goes and takes them out, puts them in a pot, plant them, and then she can replant them wherever she might wish. And then whatever she doesn't want, go ahead and pull up the rest of them and throw them away, that way. Frank.
Okay, from my field experience at 4 Gardens in Roberts Ranch, the hackberry is a great tree, but if you have a foot above the ground, you have 2 feet in the ground. So you have to take them out with 6 inches or less, and then transplant them. Because if you wait too long, you're gonna break the root at the limb at the base, it'll come back again. So unless you're willing to put a lot of work into that removing the hackberry, then you just pull them out when they're just not even an inch tall, and they come up.
Well, and that's true, and I guess it depends on what kind of soil you're working with too. In a raised flower bed, you've got a lot more leeway to let it grow a little longer. If you're trying to dig it up out there in the caliche, then good luck.
Yeah.
Gotta thank you on that. One more question?
I want to correct the volunteer team in Carville. I did not include Maya Christensen, who just joined, and I'm sorry I forgot.
Okay, thank you very much. We have some parting gifts for you both that Alice is going to give you. Thank you, Cheryl and Billy. One last piece of information on the voting earlier for our new slate of officers. For those who voted out on Zoom, it was also unanimous for those 4. So we had a unanimous acclamation. Just wanted to pass that on. And we're done until January. See you in January.
Okay, January is.